Hi, I'm Chris and welcome to my Voyo version 3 review. So this is the latest and greatest mini PC from Voyo. It's now updated with a full SSD in there, something I didn't actually realize Atom supported. It's got a 128GB SSD drive and it has an Atom X7 Z8700. This is the same chipset we've seen in the Surface 3 from Microsoft, and it has a new design. It's quite small. When you first look at it and pull it out of the box, I was a little surprised in just how thin and small this mini PC really is. If I compare that to my mobile phone, which is 5.5 inches there, you can see just how tiny it is really. And it has a tempered glass top. We have a power button on the front. Now the power button is a little interesting on this one because as soon as you plug it in, it will light up blue. But holding it down to power on the version 3 here, it doesn't actually change color, which is odd. So there's no way to tell whether it's on or not. And plugging it in, it doesn't automatically turn on like the Pipo mini PCs I've reviewed. And on the right side here, we do have a USB 2 port. So good for hooking up your mouse or something like that. And on the back, we see we do have now a new Type-C connector. That's for powering the device. A mini HDMI out, micro SD card slot, 2 USB 3 ports there, and a 3.5mm headphone jack. And just to go over the included accessory, they've given us a mini HDMI cable, and for those interested, the power supply, the Type-C one, is rated at 12 volts, 2 amps there. So providing plenty of power for our external hard drives. If you want to plug in a 1 or 2 terabyte drive to the USB ports, they work just fine. There's no power issues. The bottom is made out of aluminium, the whole shell of it, and this is being used as a rather large passive heatsink because there is no fan in here. This is not an actively cooled mini PC. We do have 4 rubber feet there. So overall the design is quite nice and has a good look to it, and just as I mentioned, very small for what it is and the power it's actually packing inside. So I'm going to now go through and boot up the mini PC and we'll run through some benchmarks, gaming tests, and a 4K test and just see how well this Voyo version 3 performs and whether it's a worthy upgrade or not to the version 2. So we have 3.79 gigabytes usable of RAM of the 4. So they've allocated 200 megahertz to the GPU, which is an Intel Generation 8 GPU that has 16 executional cores, slightly higher than the other cherry trays I normally review. And this also clocks up to 2.4 gigahertz. So Windows activated without any problems. It first came up saying I might have to go through the phone activation, but it actually just did it right in front of me, activated, and it all seems to be legit there. No problems. Now I did notice, if you saw my unboxing video, that when I first turned it on, it just went straight into a user called Voyo. A little bit dodgy maybe because it didn't go through the usual setup, so you didn't have to key in your user account name or set your language or anything like that. It just went straight into it, and they did disable the UAC for some reason. I'm not too sure why. I did a malware scan and virus scan of the system. It came back negative. There's no problems there. They haven't used any cracks on the activation or anything like that because it would have already been activated too when I booted it up. So just a couple of things I wanted to point out here, that the RAM is definitely running in dual channel according to Ada64 here. And a little bit more information there on the CPU. So we have a TJ max of 90 degrees. Now throughout this video I am keeping a close eye on the temperatures. Being a passively cooled mini PC, we do have to be very careful just how hot it's going to get because it will throttle and affect performance. And for those interested, so far after all these benchmarks I'm just about to show you, 85 degrees has been the max, and we have seen thermal throttling on core 1 and 2. So I ran through my usual benchmarks that I run. Now I could run through a whole list of benchmarks, but these are the ones I just like to run on the Atoms. So we got Geekbench 3 score, quite good considering the hardware. That's not a bad score at all. I think that's similar to what I got on my Surface 3. That has the same chipset in it. And by the way, the Surface 3 also got up to 85 degrees. And the iStorm 1.2 score, quite a good score. iStorm Extreme 1.2, CloudGate score, one of the better scores I've actually seen. Now also to note, what I did when I ran these benchmarks is I let the system cool down between the benchmarks to not affect the results. If I run the benchmarks one after another, the scores will be lower than this. And PC Mark 7. Now normally the Atoms that I test out that have the Atom X5Z8300 in it, they get around 2,300, 2,100 points on this particular test, so that's not a bad score there. One thing I did do is under the Intel graphics properly was disable. I had a battery saving feature enabled here for gaming, which is ridiculous because there's no battery in here and it's not a tablet. So I disabled that. It's under power. So I disabled this right here. Having that enabled would probably lower your scores a little bit because I think what it does is lower the clocks. So I'm going to move on now and do the fun part, just test out a few games. Afterwards I'll do a quick browser test and my overall thoughts on the system and the performance. Just wanted to mention too that before I go onto the gaming, is most importantly that SSD speed. It's not bad at all. Now it's a M2 SSD. It's the 4C brand. I mean, for an SSD it's not the fastest at all, but that is so much faster than an eMMC drive that normally gets around 120 read and about 70 writes. So this is much faster. Good 4K randoms. Not bad at all. And my micro SD card runs at full speed there. I've got a SanDisk 64 micro SD in the system at the moment, 75 megabytes per second. So I'll just test out some games now and we'll see just how well it performs. Keep an eye on the top left hand corner for the temperature and frame rate of the game I'm running. Alright, so the first title I'm going to run is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, and I'm going to run it at 1280 by 720 on the lowest settings, which I'll just show you. So we have lowest settings. Keep an eye on the upper left hand corner there. You can see the CPU 1 temperature and the frame rate. So I'm just testing out a game against bots with Counter-Strike Global Offensive here, running in 720p, and everything's on the low settings, which I'll just show you quickly. So video settings, everything's all on low there, and we'll see how this plays. And I will move on to play an online game as well. So you can see that even the offline game, that's running fine at this resolution with those settings. Now I'm on a server now, Frame rate seems okay. Not that many players on the server at the moment. Oh, I need to get the bomb. Ah, couldn't even shoot for some reason.
معك شورتي باش تفهم.
الميكروفون تاعك هذه يسموش مليح.
Now while I wait for the next round, I'm just going to lower the resolution. See how that improves things. Okay, huge improvement. Well, not so huge actually. Let's bump it up a little bit to about 40 now. That was a bit of luck. And I got sniped. I think we can see we can get reasonable frame rates. Definitely a huge step up from the Atom Z8300s that I've been testing most of the time. A lot smoother, way better frame rates. And now I'll test out League of Legends, see how this runs. I'm just going to go for a bot game. What I normally do, so just Summoner's Rift. Okay, so it didn't take too long to load compared to the normal Atom tablets that I run with the eMMC drives. They're quite slow, so that wasn't too bad. So it's running 1280 by 800, very low settings. I'm actually just going to increase this to 1080p. Should be able to run it with decent frame rates. But we'll see what happens when all the minions spawn and there's a lot of action on the screen.
30 seconds until minions.
Okay, so the minions have spawned. Moving around the map is very fluid, very quick. And we're keeping above 60 frames per second, which is what we want. They've dipped down to about 38 then. So there are a few dips in the frame rate, but overall this is looking like it's going to be quite playable. Don't forget that the CPU is also calculating the bots here, so that's going to take a bit of the frame rate away. We're going to lose some frames per second due to that. This next title here is a store game, and the last game I'm going to test out, it's Asphalt 8 Airborne, and I'm running it on the medium setting because I think Extreme's a little too demanding for these Atom X7s. So let's see how it performs. I'm using my Xbox One controller to control this. Okay, that game seems to be running smooth enough. We'll have a look at the temperatures now and see just how hot the X7 is getting. And we do have thermal throttling on core 2 and 1 there. So it's getting quite hot. I'm just going to switch now to my other camera and we'll have a look with the thermal probe to see just how the surface of the Voyo V3 is holding up, just how warm it's getting. It does feel, touching it right now, quite warm. So 38 degrees. Doesn't seem to be getting any hotter than that. It is warm to the touch. So I'm just going to do some multitasking right now. I've just opened up the CPU memory use here. You can see 61%. I have downloaded and installed Chrome. I also have Edge running there with just a few tabs open. So a bit of RAM use going on. And in the background I do also have MSI Afterburner, Steam, HW Info. They don't really use any CPU use. So I'm going to move over to YouTube and test out a 4K clip and see how well the system keeps up with that. And if it can stream 4K or not. Now I'm doing this first in Edge because Chrome doesn't handle 4K YouTube at all well. It's very slow, bogs down, quite choppy really. So we'll try this now. So 4K test clip. Now I've just turned off the audio for sound copyright reasons. And crank this up from HD right up to 2160. Let's enable these stats. So this is working well. There are no drop frames. Connection speed's definitely keeping up with this. All in all, looks very good to me. Now I'll do the same test in YouTube. Sorry, not in YouTube, in Chrome with YouTube. And we'll see the difference. So the CPU did peak right up there, up to 100%, but it was smooth. There were no drop frames. So when I see now how this works, already I can see some choppiness. Okay, so 2160 again. Enable the stats. And we can see here dropped frames, and it's running very poor. Chrome just isn't optimized for atoms. So I'm going to do a bit of multitasking here. Or should I say multi-tabbing. So load up at bbc.com. CNN. Windows Store. Oh, okay. That wasn't very fair, was it? I've got that 4K video still running. So I was running two 4K clips at the same time. Not a fair test at all. So I'm going to close that, go back to Chrome, and we'll try that again. Okay, let's try this again. I don't honestly think it's going to make much of a difference. I'm struggling to actually click on the little gear. Oh, there we go. Okay. So that's in full screen. And we're still getting a lot of drop frames. It just doesn't run well at all. So let's forget about that. Okay, scrolling speed within Chrome. Again, not good at all. Don't recommend using Chrome with an Atom tablet and Windows 10. Make sure you use just Edge and Internet Explorer. Even Firefox doesn't run well at all. So try that again, CNN, and that scrolls, loads in a lot smoother, definitely than Chrome. Playing a little bit of catch up there. So you can do some multitasking. It's just there, and that just came up with an error. Paint open. Dump an image. And overall, not too bad. Okay, and those temperatures should still be around the same. 86 degrees. So one last thing to point out, that my monitor actually supports a higher resolution than 1080p, but because I'm screen capturing this, using an external capture card, by the way, so it's not affecting any of the performance that you're seeing here, I can actually just adjust right up to 1440p, which my monitor supports. So I can go all the way up. But it doesn't allow me because I'm going through an external Elgato capture card. But it runs fine. You can run 4K at 30 Hertz, 30 frames per second with the Atom Cherry Trails. So overall, the pros and cons of the device. I'll start out with the cons. As you've seen in the video here, that it gets just a little too warm. It gets quite toasty to the touch, around 39 degrees. And the CPU 1 and 2 there, hitting 86 and 85 degrees with thermal throttling, isn't really good to see. You're going to have to push it quite hard for that to happen. Now this also happened with my Microsoft Surface 3. So the Cherry Trails are hot chipsets. So you need to bear that in mind. If you're going to be gaming for extended periods, it's going to get quite warm, and eventually it will start to throttle down a little just to keep those temperatures from reaching the T-junction max of 90 degrees. Now apart from this, everything else is quite good. I mean, the performance of it compared to other mini PCs out there with Cherry Trails in it, this is definitely one of the faster ones because it's got the Atom X7 in there, higher clocks, slightly better GPU, and overall with that SSD just removes that eMMC bottleneck we normally see. So very fast speeds when it comes to transferring files, loading times, and the overall boot time as well is very quick. So overall, I can recommend this little mini PC. I've enjoyed my time with it. It works quite well for what it is and the price tag it has as a relatively cheap but more powerful Atom PC. Thanks for watching this review. Hopefully see you back in the channel with more up and coming videos.